everyone. This is Nithin Ramachandra from the NR Sports Show. This is episode 904. I'm joined by a really special guest. Her name is Whitney Holtzman. She is the CEO of Social Victories, which we will get to. Also, she's an NFL agent, which is amazing. And she's an author for a book called You Are the First You. We'll get to all of that. And first of all, Whitney, I just want to say thank you for joining the show. It's truly an honor. And how are you and your family doing today?
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm doing well. The Buccaneers are 2-0. I live in Tampa, Florida, and grew up going to their games. And yesterday was actually the first day that I had two clients play each other. I've had two clients on the same team before, but yesterday was the first day that they played each other. So, wow. I had all kinds of emotions going on, but, it was great to see both of my guys out there. They both had good games, and then the Bucs prevailed. So it was everything I hoped for.
Wow. So I want to start off with your childhood growing up. Tell our fans about your childhood, and did you get to play any sports growing up, and who was your role model?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So growing up, grew up in Tampa, Florida, and on Monday nights, my mom used to have meetings, and she'd say to my dad, okay, this is the one night of the week that I need you to be in charge of putting the kids to bed. And pretty much every single week she'd come home and he'd have me under one arm and my brother under the other arm watching Monday Night Football, which he refers to as quality parenting. So because of him, I grew up watching football with him. And then we had season tickets to the Bucs games. And I just absolutely fell in love with sports. There was nothing else out there that allowed me to be so passionate. I mean, the highs and the lows of sports affected me like nothing else out there. And, when I was going through school, I didn't really know what I was good at, what my strengths are, where I fit in. But when I didn't want to do homework or was trying to procrastinate, all I know is that I wanted to watch football. So I said, you know what, life is very short and I want to do something I love. So I said to my family, well, I'm going to go be the sideline reporter on Monday Night Football. And they said, well, do you think you could pick a job with more than one opening? And I was like, no problem. I'll also do Sunday night, which just doubled my options. And they probably thought, oh no, like she's going nowhere, but they're very supportive parents. So they encouraged my dreams. And then I went to the University of Florida and I was there when the Gators won two football championships, two basketball championships, and Tim Tebow was in my class. So I like to say that I got to Florida and they got good. And then after I graduated, things went downhill. And then eventually I moved back to Tampa and now we're Tampa based. So some people call it the Tom Brady effect. I like to call it the Whitney Holtzman effect because, I had those 4 championships at UF and now look what's happening in Tampa. And it's funny you ask about role models because growing up, again, I just always felt like maybe I didn't really fit in or I didn't think like other people. And I thought that, there was something wrong with me or I didn't quite fit in. And it wasn't until I got to college that I started watching Oprah every day. And my friends knew you didn't come into my room from 4 to 5 p.m. And I just love how much she understood people. The stories she told were stories that really resonated with me. And I was so drawn to her content. And I love how much she deeply understood people and asked the right questions. And I learned later on from Gary Vee when I went to work for him, who's, another role model of mine. And someone who, completely changed my life. But my role models are people with the highest EQ or emotional intelligence. And Oprah was really one of the first people that I ever encountered that I felt like saw the world the same way I did.
Wow, that's amazing. And Gary Vee, what a great person to learn from. He's one of the best. He puts out content out there every day. So
absolutely. And it's funny because now everyone has heard of Gary, but when I went to work for him, I was leaving Major League Baseball and I was really the only person who knew of him. I was flying out of LaGuardia one day and ordered a pizza to the gate just because I thought it was so great that you could do that. And while I was eating it, I started reading the New York Times on the little iPads they have, and VaynerMedia was the first story. And I just instantly knew it was where I belonged and figured out Gary's email address, wrote him an email and said, I just read about you at gate, D4 or D1, wherever I was, I need to come work for you. And luckily he passed my resume along. I had 2 interviews and ultimately got the job. But, again, going back to that time, everyone around me kind of thought I was crazy, or at least they questioned me. Wait, you're leaving Major League Baseball? I mean, who does that? It's a league everyone has heard of, to go work for a guy who at that time, no one else had. They're like, how do you spell his last name? And I just knew in my heart that it was where I was meant to be. My heart was so full around Gary and VaynerMedia, and I just absolutely knew where it was, where I belonged. But I had to see the forest through the trees. And I had to know that it was the right decision for me and reassure the other people around me. And I think that's why it's very important to have tunnel vision and to know yourself, because you might either make decisions or give up decisions that are perfect for you because of what outside influences tell you, or, how they might influence you. And so you really have to kind of just put your blockers on and say, okay, no one has ever been me before. No one feels the way I'm feeling. I know what's right for me better than anyone else. And I have to go after that, to feel content in my soul. And it was one of the first times that I really made a decision because it was right for me. And I just knew it in my heart and tuned out all the other factors.
Wow. Yeah. So this is a two-part question here. And for you, what was it like growing up as a kid, just watching sports and obviously idolizing some players and staying near your hometown and going to college to UF and doing all those things? And what's that like for you, just to know the familiarity of the place that you're in right now, which is Tampa, and then being in the state of Florida the whole time?
Well, I love how you framed it that way and you put it in such a positive light, because again, for me, it was going outside of the norm and making sacrifices. I mean, you asked earlier about playing sports growing up. We had a no cup policy at my high school. So I played a variety of sports. I think I was more interested in the post-game meal than I was the actual sport. So my love of sports came from, really my dad opening doors and taking me to male sports, me being a woman, and I really fell in love with watching sports as opposed to playing sports. And, I went to a private school growing up for 14 years. And, really they emphasize success means going to an Ivy League school. So again, I had to break away from the norm because, Florida was the perfect place for me. And, it opened the doors for what I wanted to do in life. But again, at the time, a lot of people were going to those, very prestigious schools. And again, if I had gone to one of those places, it probably wouldn't have been as beneficial for me. I mean, you have to pick a place not based on prestige, but where you feel like you belong. And college, it's sort of our first foray into adulthood. And it was the first time that I really made a decision because it's what felt right. I was on a tour of and I put this in the book, a Division III school when I was searching for colleges. And we went past the football field and there were like 15 people in the stands. And I raised my hand and said, your intramural program looks great, but where's your actual football team? And they were like, no, that's it. I'm like, all right, peace, I'm out, and I sort of learned by process of elimination, what didn't feel right and what did feel right. And so that was the first time I really started following my own heart and, chasing my dreams and picking places based on where I felt I belong as my unique soul. And obviously things worked out really well in Florida. At Florida, I was in sports broadcasting. And then I went to New York after college and I had amazing job opportunities up there. I was working for ESPNW, Major League Baseball, VaynerMedia. I mean, I wouldn't trade those experiences for the world. But again, I just started to feel like, okay, I moved to New York when I was 22. I was getting older, closer to 30. And I was, working full time. And then it started to be, okay, I transitioned into, building the foundation of my own business in my free time. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I miss my family. I miss the warmth. I'm not doing the same things I did when I first moved to New York. My friends are sort of moving on to their next stage of life. And I would come home and visit Tampa. And I remember holding onto the car door on the way to the airport and just saying to my mom, like, please just tell me it's okay that I don't have to go back. And again, it was that gut feeling and my heart nagging at me. But to the outside world, I had all these great jobs in New York. Who leaves all of that and moves home to Tampa, Florida? And again, now we're Tampa Bay. But when I moved home, we weren't anywhere near where we are now. We had a little bit of success, but we certainly weren't on the map as a city and definitely weren't on the map as a sports town. And so again, I had to do what I felt was right in my heart. And then things worked out. But again, you have to sort of trust in what your gut is telling you and make decisions based on that. And then things fall into place. You may not have all the evidence in front of you. And now it's sort of given me a benefit being in my hometown. I mentioned to you earlier before we started recording that I took that video of Tom Brady throwing the Lombardi trophy. And I only did that because I happened to live right near the boat parade route and had a client in the parade and, went out to see him. And, I wouldn't have had that opportunity if, I didn't live here. I had my first client win the Super Bowl here. Oh. And, again, there have been accomplishments that followed. I had my book published here and now we're Tampa Bay, Tom Brady's here and we are sort of the center of the sports universe. And so again, career-wise, things have worked out, but what I can't ignore is how happy I've been since I moved back here. I see my family 3 to 4 times a week. I live 10 minutes from their house. I don't have to wear winter clothes anymore. I have Publix nearby. I can just drive my car and put the groceries in. And, there's warmth, there's water. I kind of feel like I live on vacation. And every time I come back here, and I land, I'm just like, I feel content in my heart. It's kind of the way, if you've ever seen like Lin-Manuel Miranda, creator of Hamilton, he talks about, in the Heights and kind of the neighborhood that he grew up in this way. It's his happy place and it's where he feels at home. And that's how I've always felt about Tampa. Like even when I lived other places, I had Tampa sports gear and pictures all over my desk. So my heart was always here. And so I moved back to make sure that I was happy and I was content, but I think it's a really important lesson that you don't have to settle because a lot of people move to certain cities and they think, I'm giving up my happiness. I'm giving up being close to my family just to have the job that I want to have. And I hope that I'm an example to people because again, Tampa was far from the center of the sports world when I moved here and great things have happened since, but I hope that I'm an example to people that you don't have to settle and a reminder that life is short. So don't give up what makes you happy just for a job. You really can have it all.
Yeah. So speaking of championship, obviously Tampa Bay is now a championship city with Buccaneers, Lightning. The Rays was this close, Tampa Bay Rays, if you want to talk about them. But for you, for you to explain your experience at being at UF, winning those 4 championships, and being around really great people there, great players, and great teammates that you had, and obviously being around Tim Tebow. What was that like for you? But just take us to winning that 4 championships first.
Sure. So again, I have, had decided prior to going to UF that, I wanted to work in sports. I was this diehard sports fan. And so to be at a place where, my first experience, we were sort of in the spotlight. I mean, it's the ultimate dream come true. And, the football team would win and we'd all run on University Avenue in Gainesville and celebrate with the basketball team. And then the basketball team would win and we'd run and celebrate with the football team. And I just think those are the memories that sports fans dream of their whole life. And it's exactly what you think it will be, if not better. It's just pure magic. And I was around other people finally who felt about sports the way that I did. And I think, again, it was that X factor. Tom Brady has it and Tim Tebow definitely has it. And what, I was a sports reporter for the UF TV station at the time. But I think what, really caught my attention or people don't realize is what a great guy Tim is. I mean, he would truly, if there was someone in a wheelchair, he would stop and talk to them and do what he could to brighten their day. And he's really funny. Like in press conferences, he had us cracking up. He is someone who has a very high EQ and emotional intelligence. And so I would see those behind the scenes moments and I knew that we were going to find a way to pull it off. And, obviously the championships are what go in the record books, but I feel like, UF really, me making the decision to go there really sort of helped my career and changed my life with those championships happening because all of a sudden we were in the center of the sports spotlight. So ESPN was coming to recruit on campus. And so I guess it was my junior year of college. And so for the summer from my junior year into senior year, ESPN came to recruit, interns on campus. And of course that was the dream. And I, took the guy's name off the flyer, wrote him an email. We had an interview and I didn't find this out until years later. but actually all 50 spots for interns had been filled at the time. And the guy that I interviewed with fought 3 people to create a 51st spot for me that year. So like, again, I don't think that would have happened if like Florida wasn't so on the map. And we always talk about, like I said, like the men and the championships, but I give so much credit to the female reporters.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Erin Andrews came from Florida. Laura Rutledge, who's on ESPN now, was also in my class. So I feel, and those women were going right from UF to ESPN directly. And so I feel like that gave me hope that I could achieve those huge dreams as well. So I feel like the timing of the success of the university sports was really fate for me and really allowed me to have the career I have today.
Wow. Yeah, you were surrounded with amazing people. I love Erin Andrews. I love Laura Rutledge. They always bring out the best. And for you, obviously, in this industry, in the sports industry, it's always important to make connections. For you, what was it like making those connections, the names I just mentioned? And also, you also work for ESPNW, which is an amazing platform now. And then you work for MLB baseball too. And what's it like? How important is it for you guys as broadcasters, obviously reporters like us, to make those connections? Because going in, and if you don't know about anything, they can give you the information and you can practice that. And so how important is connections for you guys?
Well, I think connections are everything in the sports world. I always say that all of the good people in this industry know each other. So I'm never surprised when I hear a name come back of someone I really admire that they're having great success, because that's just, you know, how it happens to play out for the good ones in our field. And, you know, connections, people are the ones who hire and who recommend you for jobs. And so, you know, Gary Vee always talks about taking the high road. And I'll just give you a quick example. In addition to connections, it's also, it's also sharing your passion. So 2 quick connection stories. So when I was at VaynerMedia, I used to sit right next to a guy named James Orsini. At the time, he was the chief innovation officer of Vayner. I mean, he was a C-level executive, and you know, he's sort of moved up since and he's basically number 2 there now. And I used to always go and say good morning and hello and chat with him, and he knew my passion for sports well. Cut to a couple of years later, Steve Ross, who owns the Dolphins, started Rise, which is a racial equality nonprofit. He was looking for someone to do their digital and social media, and Gary and James gave them my name. And again, James is someone I just said hello to every morning. You know, I never thought anything would come from it. I just, you know, we became sort of friendly as coworkers, and who would have known that would have turned out to him recommending me for a dream job that I could have never imagined for myself. So you don't know who it is that's going to come back and help you. I remember when I was at MLB, I made a connection with a woman, Mary Reiser, who worked for the Chicago Cubs. Well, cut to a number of years later, she was working at IBM, and they were looking for social media influencers to come to their big Think conference. And she recommended me, you know, went through the steps of interviewing and was chosen. And I ended up being on an 18,000 square foot billboard on the Las Vegas Strip. Again, that's a moment I could have never dreamed of. And I could have never. So a lot of people network up. I always say to network sort of over, and, you know, with other, because your peers are going to grow up in this industry to be bosses. Yeah. So don't just go for the highest level person you can find and overlook the person sitting next to you, because you don't know when they might come back and be able to help you. And then just recently, I had a colleague who worked for the Rays in Tampa. You know, we had met when we were, you know, both in the city, and, you know, he's followed me on social media ever since. Well, he now works for Tim Tebow's new NFT company called Campus Legends. And for all those years, you know, we had remained friendly, and he had followed my career path and had seen me posting all about how much, you know, I love Tim Tebow and how great I think he is. And so when he started working for his company, he recommended me to the CEO for a consulting role, which they ended up making me an offer on because he knew my passion. So I think the connections are key, and being your authentic self is also really important. And the combination of those 2 factors puts you in the right place at the right time. But any of these connections or stories that I just told you, I could have never imagined. So just be kind to as many people as you can around you, because you never know when that's going to come back to help you.
Well, did you go Did you go to Vegas at that time when your billboard was there, your picture was there?
I did. So it was actually during the conference when I was out there as a social media influencer. And I remember the subject of the email said like, you at like 18,000 square feet. So I, opened the email, of course, saw a picture of the billboard. And I'm like, well, if it's as big as they're saying it is, I must be like in the middle of the desert in a town with one stoplight. And then I looked at the address that they had listed, and it turns out, from the map, okay, this is in the middle of the Vegas Strip. So I walked out of my hotel at the end of the strip, and I remember that I could see my picture from a half a mile away and just thought, oh my goodness, this must be what celebrities feel like. You just have your big moment. And, I never thought I would sort of call home and say to my family, I'm on a billboard on the Vegas Strip. That was never what they dream. And I'm like, oh no, but it's like, I have clothes on and, like it's a professional, like it was, I just never thought, my big debut would be on the Vegas Strip.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to ask you, obviously, we had a lot of agents on the show recently last year, and then 2 of them were female. You're the 3rd female agent we had on the show.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Who are the other 2?
Let me bring them up. Hold on. Yeah, but I want to ask you though, what's the process like? What was the process like for you being an agent, and what's it like now being official agent? But take me through the process for you. How long did it take for you?
I really appreciate that question, because I think a lot of people see the end result and they think, oh, that's awesome. Like now she can represent clients. I mean, I think only my family, who was there day in and day out, could really vouch for what almost an impossible process it was. Like when it ultimately came true, it truly felt like a miracle because I had so many hurdles to overcome. So basically, in my business, Social Victories, I help pro athletes and leaders in the sports world build their brand. So mostly I'm focused on marketing, endorsement deals, social media, you name it. Well, I would watch how my clients' agents would act. And it was kind of like, okay, they do the contract and then they disappear. And the player wouldn't really see him after that. Like, unless there was money tied to an activation, the agent was nowhere to be found. And the agents tend to have a lot of clients, and I cared about my clients as family. And so I would, watch, like I had one particular client who wanted to play one more year before he retired, and his agent was in the same state. And I personally would have been sleeping at the team's facility trying to get a contract done, and pounding down doors. And this particular agent was, playing tennis at pool parties, kind of living his best life, never drove up, like put in minimal effort. And that made my blood boil, because I care about my clients like family, and I will go to the ends of the earth and do whatever I can to help them as if they were my own family. And to watch someone not really care for them in the same way at such a huge moment in their life and lives, and something they'll never get back. I mean, this particular athlete's career came to an end, but and so their NFL dreams were over. You don't get that back. So I thought, what, the one thing I can't offer to my clients is being able to do their contracts. I wonder if there's a way to make it happen. So I reached out to the NFLPA, and I had done a women's entrepreneurship program at Cornell online, and I asked if that would count instead of law school or business school, because you need a secondary degree, one of those two, to normally be able to be an agent. And they said, well, no, it doesn't count, but we do have sort of a loophole where if you have 7 or more years of marketing, or maybe it was 7 or 9. I think ultimately it ended up being 9 or more years of marketing or sales experience, you can sort of petition us to be able to take the exam. So I had my clients write letters of recommendation, and I sent them contracts that I've done for my clients. And the thing is, there was no test in 2020 because of the pandemic. So if you went to law school or business school and you applied in 2020, you have now at this point had basically a year and a half to study for the test, which was August 5th of 2021. So I found out I was approved July 7th of 2021. So whereas everyone else had, a year and a half to study, I had a little over 3 weeks. And the test is really hard.
Wow.
I mean, this year I've heard rumblings that there was like a 35% pass rate. Normally it's 45. So it's low to begin with. And this year was even harder. So to have, such a short amount of time, it truly felt like, how the heck am I going to pass this thing? And then, there are so few female agents as well. It was like the deck was stacked against me every step of this journey, but I was just completely relentless and kept doing all I could every step of the journey to leave it all out on the field. And then September 14th at around 11 in the morning, the email popped into my inbox, and I couldn't stop crying, and I was in disbelief. And it truly felt like the impossible becoming possible. And I said to a lot of people in my life, this year's been 2 years of the pandemic, have been really hard on everyone. And there have been so many disappointments, setbacks, heartbreaks, you name it. But I just kept in mind perseverance and positivity, those two keys. And that was what got the job done for me. I just kept persevering and picking myself up and continuing to go on and staying positive. And then one day, after so many bad days, there was the one day that, the dream came true.
Yeah, I got it right here. So the other two female NFL agents we had on was Savannah Foster and Allie Redding. If you know them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm inspired by them because it's just such a small cohort, but you have to sign a client every 3 years to continue to stay certified. So, I mean, it took so much for me to be able to take the test, to pass it. And, it felt like I had overcome the biggest hurdle, but, I was excited and thrilled. And then very quickly it was recalibrating to like, oh my gosh, how am I going to, be able to find clients, in the next 3 years, because, it is the biggest money they're ever going to make in their lives. And you have to find someone who's willing to take a chance on someone new.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you're allowed to speak on your situation, but on these shows, but what's it like when it comes to, for example, signing clients? I'll say that, but you don't have to name any names, but what's the process like signing these clients, and what is your pitch? I mean, pitch, what do you do to make them sign with you? And obviously, how tough is it? How hard is this job sometimes for being an agent?
Sure. Well, I think I can answer that in a few different ways. I mean, first of all, I have my business Social Victories where I have a number of NFL clients already. So while I haven't signed any, you can't even start recruiting until October 1st anyway. And I don't even like the idea of recruiting. I mean, for me, I have always sort of put out there what I've done and shared the work, and my business has honestly been via word of mouth. I mean, people have recommended me to my current clients. They've either seen my work, other clients have recommended them, or other people they trust. And then we would sit down and, get to know each other, and we had to connect on a human level. And I think they ultimately, as time went on, saw how much I cared for them, what I was able to do for their career. So I'm just hopeful that that will spill over into, recruiting clients on the field as well. And, again, I hope that they see my heart and, how my work ethic, I would go to the ends of the earth for them. And, I've made the impossible happen for me. And a lot of my clients are undrafted, and now they're, in their 9th or 13th years in the NFL. And so it just shows what having a good brand can do. And, a lot of agents become, they go to law school and they become agents and do the contracts. Well, I have the whole marketing background, which hopefully, will be very valuable and enticing to clients these days. And I think that, obviously being a woman in this field is so challenging, and we're not what a typical agent tends to look like or what people think of as an NFL representative, but I do my best to choose to look at the positives of what being a woman can bring to the table. I mean, a lot of my clients say, look, we were raised by single moms, and so in our world, strong women get the job done. Or they'll tell me, look, we're young men thrust into the spotlight and we're living in new cities, and you bringing that nurturing approach, kind of makes it feel like home. And, we miss that warmth in our lives. And so I think that, I always try and be myself. And I hope that, similar to my Social Victories business and the clients that I do marketing for, the people who will choose me will see what I bring to the table as assets, and they want someone with my traits versus anyone else who's out there.
This is a two-part question. And what's a feeling like? Obviously being an agent, it's amazing, obviously tough job, but it's a good good thing to be because you get to make connection with these NFL players or whoever. But what's it feeling like when a player signs their contract officially and breathing a sign of relief, so now they can just focus on football and you can focus on the next thing? So what's that like for you when someone signs a contract? And the next part, how did the social victories come about?
Sure. So when you have a player sign a contract, it kind of feels like those moments of winning a championship. It's kind of the ultimate dream come true, and you can't believe it. And it's everything you dreamed of, but it's finally happening. And that lasts for a couple minutes. And then signing the contract, just like becoming an agent, is just paperwork. You haven't actually gone and done the job. And so I don't want to disappoint myself. I don't want to disappoint them. So for me, the contract is just a formality. It's what I can do for them after that. And, it's just the green light for me to hopefully make their lives better and for me to start proving myself. Social Victories came about. I was in New York and I, was working for Rise at the time, and they were on their third CEO. And each time they brought in someone new, we weren't sure if we were going to be retained because, it's sort of like an NFL coach, like they may want to bring in their own staff. So just as a safety net, I started Social Victories on the side. And ultimately after Rise, when I started Social Victories, I was just doing some social media and like small marketing. And my first client was Phil Mickelson. I did a whole social media game plan for him. It took me 30 hours and about 18 pages, but he was super happy with it and his team was. So that was very validating for me, like to show I was on the right track. And then after Rise, Gary recommended me for a job with Brandon Marshall, who was a wide receiver with the Giants at the time. And I did his, I was his chief marketing officer. So I did the marketing for his fitness centers. I did his endorsement deals, and then I did the marketing for his mental health nonprofit. And we went around the country basically doing suicide prevention trainings. And I'm really passionate about that intersection of sports and making the world a better place. And then Brandon Copeland, who was my first full-time client with Social Victories, was working out at Brandon Marshall's gym and saw the work that I was doing for Brandon Marshall and reached out. And when I learned Brandon Copeland lived on 15% of his salary and what a great guy he was at the time. I'm sorry.
That's a crazy, inspiring story right there.
Really is. And he's stuck to it, and he's, changed a lot of lives and really used his platform to become his purpose. But at the time Brandon Marshall's career was winding down, I had a client who was interested, and, I was really scared to give up a salary and take that leap of faith. But something deep inside just said, if this doesn't work out, I can go back to corporate America. And honestly, I put what I was doing on social media, and that was almost 4 years ago, and I've never looked back since. And then I had my first client in Tampa, and one way or another, more clients have come my way since then. And it started out again as, okay, I'm just going to do, some marketing and social media and maybe some endorsement deals. And then clients want a website and business cards and you name it, help with their resumes. And so it grew to now I can help them, launch podcasts, anything they need from a marketing perspective. And I say I help the clients that I work with become the best versions of themselves and build their brands. And so it's holistic. And the one thing I couldn't help with previously was their football contracts. And now I can officially say I do it all.
Wow, that's amazing. Good for you. Kudos to you, Whitney. It's really
Thank you.
Powerful, inspiring, and what you have there. And our team is big into helping out the community, and we're part of this foundation, which we'll get to later. If you guys need any help with the Social Victories, we're down to help as a podcast. So you want me to promote stuff, if you want us to promote stuff for you, we can on our stories or wherever, Twitter, wherever, LinkedIn. So we're happy to help you there with Social Victories.
Thank you for all the good that you're doing in the world. And I think, to that point, hopefully someone is listening who, has a football client who would like me to represent them, and eventually become their agent when I can start recruiting October 1st, the 3 years begins. So, I'll be on the clock. And then, I know you and I have talked about it, but along the way, I wrote a book called You Are the First You. And you can find it on Amazon now. And look, as much as I love and hope to be able to sell the book, at the end of the day, I wrote it because I have learned so many lessons along the way that I think you have to know in life and in business, but that no one ever taught me in school. Right. And also I have had to tune everyone else out and have tunnel vision and trust my gut. And that sounds great, but it's really hard when everyone else around you is going left and you're going right, or, is critiquing what you're doing. That's really hard to stomach. And so the book hopefully will inspire other people, and especially ones who may not have a support system, to sort of chase their dreams and find happiness, but also any lesson that for me, I think is important in the world that I would ever tell someone, all of them are in this book. So I really hope it helps people.
Yeah. And speaking of like inspiring stories and whoever went through a tough time, and obviously this is really important. I'm just curious because some people don't bring this up as an agent. There's another important task for an agent which is making connections with the family of the players. Because, for example, some of these players come up with for example, didn't grow up with the father or mother, or a bad background, or something happens in their life. And for example, Darren Waller comes to an instance. Look at his story. He went through a lot with drugs, alcohol, I think, and obviously being cut by the Ravens, being picked up by the Raiders now, and having a heck of a career in his journey. So for you being an agent, what's it like for you just to talk to these players' families, making sure they'll be in the right situation, right environment? And have you had players that have been through like rough times, rough patches?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone gets out of life without going through hard times. I mean, part of being human is that you have highs and you have lows. I have had a lot of hard times. They have had a lot of hard times, and they've had, great moments and terrible moments, even in the times that I, have worked with them. And you kind of just hope that I'm not in a terrible place when they're in a terrible place, but ultimately, no matter what, I am the CEO of the company. And so really, when I'm going through something, I've been amazed at how much my clients have gone above and beyond to be there for me. But I think that, sort of what sets me apart is that EQ and emotional intelligence and understanding people. And I'm able to stream positivity back into their lives. Because, when you're going through a tough time, that's all you can see around you. But I have the benefit of being objective and seeing the full scenario. And so hopefully I am able to, pump them up and help them see that what they're going through is temporary. It doesn't define them, and that it usually has nothing to do with them. And, it sounds cliche, but we are a family first company. And I mean that the money and the whatever else, the business comes secondary to the well-being of my clients as people and their families. I am extremely close. I mean, one of my NFL clients' dad just bought my book on Amazon. One of them graduated with his MBA. I went to his graduation all weekend with his family. I just saw another one this past weekend. I gave him a little gift for his son because his son's about to become a big brother. They're going to have another baby.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I actually have separate relationships with the wives, the girlfriends, and the kids of my clients. And honestly, that is the way I operate, because for me, my friends have always known growing up, and now my clients know it's family first. Like, my family always comes first, and everything that I do, my family is going to be a part of. And to be part of my life, they get to know my family. And so I couldn't imagine just working with them and not being inclusive of their family, because that is the only way I know how to operate.
Wow. Yeah. So, and what's it been like for you working with Brandon Marshall and Brandon Copeland? Because obviously, Brandon, two great players. Brandon Marshall, obviously a great former receiver, and now he does big things with mental health. And he does a couple podcasts out there with Channing Crowder, Fred Taylor. And what's it been like working with both these players?
I always say that the guys that I've worked with make me a better person. And, I always tell them, instead of looking at football or whatever sport as your purpose, look at it as your platform to your purpose. And when we're talking about branding, being an athlete is temporary, but that's all they've been called their whole lives. And you just can't define yourself by something that's temporary, or you're going to have a lot of mental health struggles when it all comes to an end. Mm-hmm. So my whole goal for them is to sort of build their platform and their brand while they're playing, and so that it's a smooth transition to life after sports. But, looking back at Brandon Marshall, when he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, everyone told him, okay, don't tell anyone about this. It was the days before mental health was really talked about. And, instead he insisted on having a press conference that could have really hurt his career. But instead people have looked up to him and said, well, if he can get up there on the biggest stage with his contracts on the line and career on the line and say, I have borderline personality disorder and this is the treatment I've sought, and this is what I'm going through, and be really open and vulnerable, it shows other people it's okay too. And I think that athletes, men, and Brandon said, like, in addition, the Black community, I mean, those are groups that don't talk about being vulnerable as much. And so he was a combination of all of them. So imagine the impact to all those communities for him to come out there and say those words. And then someone like Brandon Copeland, I mean, he's such a wonderful guy. I mean, when we were negotiating our contract to start working together, he insisted I take a higher percentage cut from our NFL deals, or the deals we were doing for him, because he knew I was going to be working above and beyond, and some deals wouldn't come to fruition. So he wanted me to be compensated for the times that I worked and didn't get paid. I mean, that is a spectacular human being right there. And, he was undrafted, and just to watch his resiliency and his commitment to his family and how he always does the right thing. I mean, he has an event every year. He takes 200 kids to Target, homeless and foster kids, and gives them a $200 shopping spree. This year over the holidays, he did $800 on Amazon to families across the country, a lot of single moms. I mean, no matter what he has going on, he uses whatever he's given to make the world a better place. And frankly, again, financial literacy is not something that's talked about. He's now a professor in the off season. He could be relaxing on a beach, but instead he wants to pass along the knowledge that he's gotten as an NFL player to help all those other people out there, us regular people, make sure that, we live a financially savvy and smart life. And, think of the number of lives and generations that's going to touch when he, has a full-time job playing football.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, obviously, speaking of mental health, now, not only NFL players, other players from different sports are speaking about it now. For example, Kevin Love from the Cavaliers, he spoke on it himself. He's dealing with some stuff. And what's it like now seeing players being more confident in their careers to speak on this situation?
All I can say is that they are saving lives. I mean, all of us are somewhere at any moment sort of on the mental health spectrum. We're having a good day, we're having a bad day, we're going through some really serious stuff, but chances are, whatever you're going through, a lot of other people around you are also, but at the time you feel like you're the only one. And for the most part, there's, whatever you have has a name, and that you can get help. And a lot of people wouldn't know about those things unless they saw their favorite athlete mention them. And I always say the reason I work in sports and love sports is because it's the greatest unifier and vehicle out there. No matter your age, your gender, your economic level, your education level, what city you came from, everyone looks up to athletes in the same way. And so they have the greatest power. And so, and they also have huge platforms to touch people. So, they're probably putting their careers, it's very scary to come out and speak your truth and to talk about being vulnerable. As much as we hear it, it's never easy for those guys, but they are exponentially changing the world for the better and impacting the most number of lives, because they're making other people feel understood and a lot less alone. And who knows how many people out there were, on the brink of maybe taking their own lives or doing something disastrous because they thought there was something wrong with them. And then they hear one of these athletes speak up and they have it too. And it's like, oh, my favorite athlete, like this is normal. And the coolest guy I know has this. So like, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just a matter of, working through whatever challenge I have facing me.
So I want to get to an important topic of women in sports. I'm a big advocate of women in sports, and
thank you.
Yeah, we have I have a team of 8 people helping me out. 4 of them are females, and my friend Kia, who's part of it too. And we went to a couple of NFL events during the summer, and we met Lori Lacoste, the Buccaneers defensive coach, and she's amazing. What an honor to meet her in person. And we also met Jamal Dean, the defensive back from the Buccaneers, and we met Kevin Ross, your linebackers coach. So for you, women in sports is really important. Like Lori Lacoste, I just mentioned, you yourself, Aaron Andrews, Laura Rutledge. I got obviously Savannah Foster, Allie Redding. You can go Sarah Thomas and Tara Fuller. What's it like, the growth of women in sports now?
I remember when I was at ESPNW, I helped launch a series called Power Players, which highlighted women who work on the business side of sports. And again, growing up, I wanted to be the sideline reporter on Monday Night Football, probably because that was really the only job that I saw publicly where a woman was working in sports.
Right.
And when I started the Power Players series and I was interviewing women and teams and leagues front offices, I learned that all these positions existed and there were women doing them and female athletic. And I had no idea until I was in my 20s and happened to work in sports and started interviewing these women. And that's what it took for me to learn. So imagine how many other people out there had no idea as well. And so again, when I became an agent, I kind of even said to my family, like, if I never sign a client, so be it. But what matters to me most is that I've shown someone else out there, and hopefully, women especially, that even if you didn't go to law school or business school, there's still a way that you can achieve your dreams and you can represent clients. And I think the intangibles and doing things the right way really matter. And that's sort of why I put all of it in the book, and finding the right people to connect with. But I always call my clients my champions, because this wouldn't be possible without them. And, they open doors for me and I open doors for them that neither one of us would have. I'm never playing in the NFL, and they don't have my business experience up until this point. And so we really sort of make a great team. And so I think finding those champions is super key as a woman in sports, and people who were really, the guy who created the internship at ESPN, at the end of the day, we're the minority. So you really need the minority to vouch for you and to make room. That's the only way you're going to have change. So those people are so key in making our dreams come true. But at the end of the day, you just hope that you've shown other women out there. Both my parents are lawyers. My brother's a lawyer. I'm from Tampa, which is not a big sports town, or now is, but wasn't when I was growing up. Yeah. And so, it's not like I had connections or, so I just hope that I'm, an example to other people who have these dreams, that they can make it happen, even if they don't initially have those resources at their disposal.
So what advice would you give to young kids or young kids and that want to be in the same business as you, being an agent?
Sure. There's a few things. I always say that the only thing people remember about you is how you make them feel. It's from the Maya Angelou quote. And so, as you go about life, that's the number one thing that you should keep in mind. And I also talk a lot about being relentless. I think that is the key. Like, being mentally strong, because I can't tell you, one time I was sold a fake ticket to a Super Bowl game, and I, put the whole story in the book, but I fought my way, and eventually by a miracle made it into the game in the second quarter, and was when Tom Brady was down 28-3 and then came back and won. Yeah. And when I was working for ESPNW, they asked me to do a story on a Friday of Super Bowl week to talk about how much food was consumed. And I just kept going and going and going until I was able to, get that information from Cowboys Stadium, which was like pretty much impossible 2 days before the big game to get in touch with the staff there. And that story ended up earning me more of a full-time role. And I have a number of examples throughout my career where it looks like, it's been super successful, but it's like that perseverance and positivity I talked about. Most people would have thrown in the towel at an earlier time, and I just kept going multiple times until there was not a solution left on the planet. And I think, people really need to know, like, you can't be mentally weak to achieve your dreams. You have to be determined and can't have, one toe in the water. You have to know yourself, know what you want, and go after it with your whole being.
Yeah. So what's it like for you sharing your stories on these different platforms, like these shows, podcasts, and now you have having a book, and what's that been like for you, just sharing your story in a book and on these shows?
Gosh, it's a dream come true. So grateful to have people like you who, create a platform for me to share my story, and especially to have someone else, the way you are, supporting women, because we don't have a voice without people like you doing what you're doing. And again, I say to my clients, look at sports, instead of looking at it as your purpose, look at it as your platform to your purpose. And I think for me, my ultimate happiness has been being able to teach people and impact their lives. And that's my, platform. My business was my platform. My purpose is teaching and impacting lives. And these opportunities have allowed me to sort of live out my dream and what I feel like I'm meant to do, sort of, again, my purpose. And so they're my happiest moments and my favorite thing to do. So dream come true.
Yeah. So I want to get before we do this fun little segment called a rapid fire segment. So before we get to that, I want to get to your Buccaneers fandom because over the years, obviously, before you guys built the super team, I should call it a super team. This is loaded, but over the years, the Buccaneers had a lot of ups and downs, but eventually now they found their way. And so for you, I want to ask you about last year when you guys had Jameis Winston, or 2 years ago, sorry, when you had Jameis Winston and he went through a struggle, and everybody said that this is not a great fit. So, what was your thoughts as a fan that year? And then seeing, did you ever think to your mind that you can get the one of the best quarterbacks in the league, the GOAT, after Jameis?
No. It was quite a progression. First of all, I lived in New York when we drafted Jameis Winston. I remember being sick to my stomach when we did, because I feel that, again, I just know with my EQ what it takes to be successful. And so I don't look at stats. It's how much I believe in the person. And the difference between people who succeed and the ones who don't is good judgment. And I did not think Jameis had that. And I don't think the greatest I don't think the greatest leaders and winners ever had bad judgment. If you look at Tom Brady and Tim Tebow, they have excellent judgment. And I think that those are the people who become the ultimate winner. So I did not like the pick, and not just because I went to Florida and he went to FSU. And then it was so many years of the same thing. Like for me, again, the greatest leaders are not inconsistent. They're great because they are consistent. They're consistent in making good choices and in winning. And so people here were so wishy-washy. He would have a bad game, like, it's kind of how I felt about it. And then he would have a great game and people would be like, he's the ultimate, and I'm like, yeah, but the fact that it's not consistent tells you that he's not an ultimate winner. Like, we've been through so much of this. It wasn't one bad game, it was 5 years. And so, once we signed Tom Brady, again, I think of Tampa as this small little secret that I grew up here and I love it and I love the people here, but no one else had ever heard of it. So when Tom Brady said, I was in disbelief. I just never thought that there was a possibility he could end up here. Obviously, he's, was in demand by a lot of teams. I just assumed he'd pick a bigger market in a bigger city. And it happened during the pandemic. He and Gronk signed. So I'm like, now we're in an Alanis Morissette song, like ironic, where the greatest players of all time are here and we're never going to get to see them. And then, we started the season in a pandemic last year with Jameis Winston as our quarterback. And we ended the year with Tom Brady as our quarterback, as Super Bowl champion. So I just tell people, like, that shows how much can truly change in a year.
Yeah. So you ready for this rapid fire segment real quick?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Fire away.
So were you surprised that my Cowboys was able to hang with you guys week 1, even though we lost?
I was not surprised. I think that Dak is one of those guys who's a winner, who has those intangibles that make him super successful. Also, you guys were on Hard Knocks this year. Yeah. And so, you saw the fire, and I think everyone has seen Dak's character all along. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is fire. Micah Parsons, I knew was going to be a big deal. And I also think there's such thing as a Super Bowl hangover. So, and last year the Bucs played very poorly in night games. So I really didn't know how the game was going to go. I was more surprised that the Bucs Falcons game was closer this past week for a little bit, 28-25, than I was that it was a close game with the Cowboys.
So everybody's talking on these radio stations, Sports Network and sports shows, that Buccaneers can make this a historic season by going 20-0. Do you think that's a realistic option? Do you think that can happen? Because you guys are loaded on the defense. There's no weakness on this team. So is there a chance you guys can go repeat again and go 20-0?
Well, a few things. I do think our secondary is a current weakness. We have some injuries. Sean Murphy-Bunting got hurt last week. We're really thin at cornerback. So I think that's an area of question. Again, the Super Bowl hangover is real. Look, anything is possible. I'm big in the dreaming big game and having a North Star and chasing after it with your whole being, the way I have my career. But predictions are hard because it's very hard to win in the NFL. That's the thing that people overlook when they're making predictions. They're, talking about certain teams or players, and they, someone has a good game or the greatest of all time, and they run away with that storyline. every team is really good. And on any given Sunday, anything could happen. Every game is a fight to win in the NFL. So, it's possible we could go 20-0, but just because we're Super Bowl champions last year, it's a new team this year. And, you never know what's going to happen. I think the Rams are going to be a tough test this week. And so, again, it's possible, but I think that the games weekly, no matter how good a team is, are going to be very competitive every week for every team. Upsets happen all the time.
Man, I can't wait for that game. That's gonna be a high scoring game, in my opinion.
I think so too. Take the over.
Yeah. I want to ask you though, what was the toughest contract you have done so far as an agent?
Well, I actually haven't become, you don't officially become an agent until October 1st. I just passed the test.
Okay.
So I would say for sure the test was really hard. Approximately a 35% pass rate. I think that says it all. And I was like, you don't find out the results for 6 to 8 weeks. So I was like super sick afterwards. So I will get back to you on the hardest contract. I think at the end of the day, the biggest challenge, is getting people to believe in you. I always say everyone wants to be the second person to hire you. No one wants to be the first. So getting that first person to hire you is a really big deal. And then also a lot of people want things for free from athletes or from me. And I think getting people to actually pay up is more challenging than it looks from the outside.
Yeah. So Tom Brady has a podcast and he said that he can play to his age 50. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, that guy can do anything he puts his mind to.
Favorite music?
Say that again?
Favorite music?
So that's really hard for me. I like a variety. I love Broadway music, obsessed with Celine Dion, the Backstreet Boys, Whitney Houston, pop music, and I love country as well.
So what was the first thing you guys did when the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl last year?
So I have to tell you, backtrack a little bit. It's the pandemic. There were only 14,000 tickets. I was determined to find a way to go.
Yeah.
I was able the day before to find 2 tickets and being able to take my dad to the game, who's the reason that I work in sports, who's the reason that I love sports and love the Bucs, was the best moment of my entire life. I cried because I got to share it with him. Wow. And by the way, we were the first team to ever win in our home stadium. Yeah. So I got to share the moment with him, not only seeing the team we grew up watching, but in the place where my sports dreams came to fruition. So and I had one client win the Super Bowl and one client broadcasting the game. And so that were, business wins for me as well. So I just think I cried for a long time and was in complete disbelief.
So before we get to the last 2 things, what's it like people using your video of Tom Brady now on all these shows and apparently on the Emmys too? So what's it like having them use your video?
It's surreal because you never think you're going to be the single person to capture the most viral moment of the biggest, most well-known player in the game. So I think I still can't believe that it happened. I joke that my brand now is boat parades. I just hope every time that it's played that the people pay me for it.
Yeah, you deserve it.
Thank you.
So the last 2 things here before I let you go, our team is part of this foundation, the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach. He's now the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George. We're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. So I'll send you the foundation so you can go check it out.
Please do. I would absolutely love that. I think Hugh is one of those guys that, similar to Tony Dungy, that everyone has looked up to because of his character. And it's not talked about enough what a serious issue human trafficking is. It often happens around sporting events. And I think people see it happening in other countries, but they don't realize it's happening right here on our turf. And I just really appreciate you and Hugh, bringing a spotlight to it and hopefully, helping to eradicate it.
Yeah. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
Yeah, I think about this every time I go to a football game, but you are truly the real heroes. And I know that wording is used a lot, but I just think back to my own daily life when the pandemic hit and how I was so grateful that I lived alone and I could socially distance, and I had all the amenities to stay safe. And actually, out my window is Tampa General Hospital. That is my view. And every day I would look, and still to this day, and it takes my breath away. And they have saved this pandemic. It's obviously been a complete tragedy, but without them, so many more of us would still be affected. And that goes to the scientists who developed the vaccine. They've, everyone who has shown up every day and put their own lives on the line to save others. I mean, that just brings tears to your eyes. They are the true heroes of our country. And thank you every day. And as hard as it is, please know that you're impacting lives, you're saving lives, you're inspiring people, and you may not hear it every day, but goodness, we are so grateful. It's like people who serve in the military, like your bravery allows us to have our freedom.
Yeah, well said. And there you have it. Episode 904 in the wraps with the amazing, inspiring Whitney Holtzman. Go follow on all social media formats. She's a CEO of Social Victories. She's an NFL agent, and she has a book out there called You Are the First You. Go check that out. Amazing and inspiring woman out here, strong woman, I would say. And keep up the great work, Whitney. Thank you for joining the show today. It's truly an honor, and I'm glad that you got to share it on this platform to share to our fans too. And I'm sure they learned a lot from this, and I learned a lot from this for sure. And we'd like to have you back as a returning guest so you can meet the full team.
I would love that. And I truly just want to thank you. You're such a nice person. You asked wonderful questions. And again, my hopes and dreams could never come true without people creating a platform and allowing me to tell my story and to get the word out and to hopefully sign clients and achieve my dreams. And so thank you for being someone who's made that possible.
Anytime, Whitney. And that's what our show is all about, learning. It's not about the fame, it's about the story. So
Agreed. Well, I feel so lucky to have met you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.